G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, we're going to be reviewing this bad boy right here. Now, a little disclaimer, this has two names, so the name that I'm going to call it and also the name that Gearbest call it, because Gearbest have some stupid name. It's called the Gbx210, I think. I'll leave a link down below anyway, but what I'm going to call it the Firehawk, because it's got some DYS FIRE motors, it's got some really awesome components in here, and it's like also rocking the Gbx210 frame, and you can see this thing looks absolutely crazy. This is a really cool quad to fly. So what we're going to be doing, this thing comes in kit form. We're going to be sticking it on the bench, and in this part one of the review we'll be having a look at all the components and sort of putting some of the frame and a bit of a breakdown of everything that's in it. And then in part two we're going to take it out to the field. I'll talk about how it did go together and how I found the build, and we'll take it out to the field and give this thing a thrashing around, because I know you guys are going to love it. Anyway, let's get started. Alrighty, so here it is out on the bench, and straight away you can really tell that everything in here is some really high quality components. So let's have a bit of an overview of what you're going to get in the frame, in the kit. You're going to get this ridiculously looking Gbx210 frame right here, and we're going to go through all these parts in detail. You're going to get a ton of props, so you've got heaps of props to get through. You're going to get an F3 flight controller, a TBF Triumph antenna. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. You're going to get a very interesting choice of FPV camera, which we'll talk about. A whole bunch of all your little extras, your standoffs and all that sort of jazz, as well as like some sticky parts, your LEDs. You're going to get a pretty standard PDB, decent, like a Foxy brand VTX. You've got your DYS heli ESCs. You're going to get a velcro strap, and then something I'm super excited about, I'm actually going to get a chance to test out these fire motors. So some really cool pieces of kit in here, heaps of spares. What I can't wait to do is get in, get started, and then eventually get building. So let's start off, and probably the first thing I want to look at, let's check out this crazy looking frame. Alright, so here it is. Here is, I guess, the main part of the frame, and this is using the Gbx210 frame, and this is a really special, interesting frame, because not only does it look pretty awesome, it's got some really cool design features in it. Now it's going to be a little bit hard to show you, I guess, just looking at these parts. It's a little bit difficult to sort of get an idea of how this goes together, but essentially your arms are on two totally different levels, and I'll talk about the flight characteristics of this a little bit later, and especially in part two of the review where we actually take it out and give it a rip around. But essentially what that is going to allow is for some high speed events, when you really got your quadcopter tilted up, these propellers here are going to have some nice fresh air, and they're not going to be encountering any turbulence from the front propellers when you're on that really steep angle of attack. Now it does come with a whole bunch of little bits right here that I've got as well. So you've got all these little bits that are used as your FPV camera. That part's not really too important in my opinion. It is going to let you have a crazy steep angle, but what I do want to mention is these things have all been rounded. They're very smooth. The carbon feels fantastic, and it's also really thick. So I'm going to guess that it's a full 4mm. There we go. So I'm getting 3.9mm, and I tend to find that these calipers are always about 1mm short anyway. So there we go. 4mm for the top one. There we go. It's putting me to shame. So, but essentially these two things go here like this. Now it is a 210mm frame, and it's designed to spin some 5-inch props. Now the really interesting part here, I think, there's actually a couple of different ways you can use to mount things to this frame. So you can either put your motors and have them spinning on top, or you can mount your motors upside down underneath on the back arms if you wanted to do that. Possibly, I don't know, look, here's just some crazy ideas, but maybe you could run some 6-inch propellers on the back and some 5-inch on the front, or you could mix it up with a whole bunch of those sorts of things. So by having a frame that is so different and giving so many different places for antenna, for prop sizes and motors and all those sorts of things, you really open up some possibilities to some crazy experiments, which is what I like, because I want to see some new stuff. I want to test some stuff out. It doesn't have to be the best, but I want to test things out so we can find out what the best is, and I'm definitely very impressed. From the moment I saw these frames, I thought I definitely want to check one of those out, build something super cool that's maybe going to turn some heads, and hopefully give me that little bit of an edge when I'm sort of pushing it around, because we're always after those little performance boosts. Now you can see on the bottom frame, this is the bottom one and this is the top one. The top one has some massive cutouts right in here, and that's basically where your FPV camera is going to slide up from the top, and it's going to be in its own special little pod, and that's going to go in here. I think it's like that. And then towards the back, you've got your little rounded hole for an antenna. Heaps of cutouts and spaces where if you need to be adjusting something for your dip switches on your VTX or something like that, you can do that right here. Something interesting, I've never seen this before, this little cutout right here. This would be, and remember this is on the top plate, this is probably probably so you can run your signal leads and your motor wires down underneath and have them protected underneath right here. So that's another cool little addition, keeping things very, very nice. On the bottom, it's more of a bit of a thicker plate. Oh, and you do have heaps of motor protection. So if you're going to smash this thing into the ground, I think this thing is going to protect your motors, which is important to me on this frame because we are going to be putting some awesome motors on here. You've got your standard 36 by 36 mounting holes, a whole bunch of other little screws and spaces for your standoffs and all that sort of jazz. And then your two little slits for your Velcro battery strap, which somewhere, let me get that, we'll have a look at that now. So there it is, and to be honest, that looks like it's a pretty good quality one. Rubberized, you know, decent length, so yeah, so that should be pretty good as well. And one of the other extras that comes with the frame is this little plate here, and look, I'm on the fence if I'm going to use it or not. That's about a 1.5, is that 1.5? Let's zero this in. That's about a 1.5 millimeter little battery protector plate right there that you can slide onto your Velcro. That goes underneath, and that's going to protect your battery. So if you do want to use this, you can protect your battery, because I know a lot of people, they end up damaging their batteries if they have a hard crash when you've got an underslung battery. Now, of course, you get all your standoffs and your screws and all those sorts of things. And what's going on here with these screws? So that's the first time I've sort of seen some, I don't know, what are they? Brass colored ones. So that's pretty interesting. You got your little rubber grommets and all that sort of jazz, all those little bits that you use to actually put the frame together. Now, while we're here, one of the things I do want to point out, and I really, really like, is this little LED thing, because this little LED board here, I think quads look so much better when you're chasing them down, and they've got some big, bright LEDs in the back, so it's fantastic that we've got these. I wonder if the button right there is going to be for turning it on and off. If it is, that is super cool. Or maybe it's for changing colors. I'm not 100% sure, but what that's going to do, I think Gb's done a great job here. You're just going to sit that in, and that's going to be sticking out the back of your frame. So, you're going to have a massive LED board out the back, and it's also programmable as well. So it takes 5 volts, and you can just hook it up in clean flight and change the or beta flight, whatever, and change all the colors to make it suit exactly what you want it to do. Okie dokie, so on to our next part, and so we've had a look at our really, really cool frame, and we also, this is another reason why there's actually a whole bunch of things in this kit that I'm really, really excited, and probably things that I would choose in my build, but definitely one of them, I want to check out these, and I've been looking at these for a while as well. These are the DYS FIRE Motors, so these are the race series 2300 kV, and I've heard some awesome things about here. So just on the back, it's got a few specs for us, so apparently some awesome bearings. I don't know what that 0.1 lamination sort of thing is, but it does rock the M54 magnets, which are getting more common nowadays. I think most motors that people are producing using those, and it's also got the hollow shaft, which means it's going to have a very, very strong shaft, because a hollow shaft is actually stronger than a solid one when it's in this small size. And overall, a really, really cool motor. And also, look at the color of this thing. Like, you know, it's a little bit vain to say that, but I think that looks awesome. I can't wait to have this on this build. Feels very, very smooth, meant to put out a ton of thrust, so a really, really awesome choice of motor. I can't wait to go out and absolutely rip it. Hopefully I don't puff too many batteries, because I've heard these things absolutely destroy the thrust numbers. So that is pretty cool. And that's also going to be spinning some of these props. Now you are getting, I think you get 5 sets of props. So you've got 5 sets of props in here. Not my favorite style of looking prop. It looks like they actually really remind me of the King Kong props, even though they're a different sort of shape. So I don't know what brand this is. It doesn't say anything like that, but you're rocking some 50-40 tri-blades. And this is pretty much perfect. They've definitely got a color theme going on here. This is definitely the perfect prop to put on these motors, because these things should have plenty of torque. A 5-inch tri-blade prop is great. And you notice on the edge, these ones aren't bullnose, but they're pretty close to it. So I really, really think that we're going to have a ton of thrust coming out of these things. Now moving on, here's the next part I want to check out, and so the VTX in this bad boy is, so we'll talk about the FPV stuff sort of now. So we're going to be using the Foxeer 25 milliwatt switcher. So this can switch in power. I think it's 25, 200 or 500 milliwatts possibly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're the ones that you can switch to. It's RP SMA, nothing too special right there. Look, Foxeer is an okay brand. They're not my favorite brand, so I'm a bit on the fence there, but it's definitely still going to be better than some of those no-name brands out there. But having a switcher, that's really useful, because if you want to take this to races or you're flying with other people, you can dial down your power so more people can fly with you. And if you're just flying by yourself, crank it up to max. Now, what the interesting part here is, you get one of these antennas. So I'm going to say that this is legit, But I hope so anyway, because this is a TBS Triumph antenna. And I mean, these things are awesome. I use these all the time whenever I can. It's a bit unfortunate that all mine are RP SMA, but that's going to be fine when it goes on here. But yeah, the Triumphs are pretty much the current, in my opinion, the current gold standard of an antenna that gives you fantastic reception and also is extremely durable, because these things are definitely very, very hard to break. So fantastic choice of antenna right there. And then on the other end of this, we have our FPV camera. Now this part is a little bit interesting, and I do have some questions about this. So the FPV camera that we have, I think it's got its label. Where's its label? Right here. Here we go. It is the Foxy Monster. Hopefully you guys can see that. Might be a little bit out of focus, but I'll read it to you anyway. The Foxy Monster, it is a 16:9, so a widescreen camera, so that's very interesting. And it's also 1200 TVL, so in here, this is pretty much has double, I think it's like the lines that go through it than your standard camera. Is that a good thing? You know, you might get a bit of a clearer, sharper picture, but you're also going to be getting more latency. So I'm a bit on the fence. I don't know if I want to fly in widescreen anyway in this sort of, I guess, high performance racer. And at the same time, do I want that 1200 TVL? Because that might be making it a little bit more latency, and latency is king when you're flying these little rockets around. So that's a very interesting choice of camera. I'm going to test it out, but it will be interesting to see if I want to keep it in there or if I want to swap it out to maybe like a Runcam Owl or Runcam Swift or something like that. Now, of course, some of the other, I guess, more standard components to talk about, things that are pretty standard to most of these little GB kits anyway. I don't know why they call them GB. That really, I wish they had some more interesting names, because you've got so many, the GB190, GB250, GB210, Gbx210. It's very, very confusing. But anyway, here's the flight controller we have in the kit. I've used a ton of these. So this is the SP F3 flight controller. Hopefully it's got Betaflight on here. We'll definitely be putting that together and checking that out. But yeah, I'm not going to say too much about that. Pretty standard. Used them heaps in the past in most of my builds anyway. On the other end of the motors, I guess another bit of average thing we have here. Here's the XS 30 amp BO Heli S DYS ESCs. So these should go really really well actually with our fire motors. So 30 amps, that's going to let us have an awesome burst rating up here. So we shouldn't be blowing any ESCs anytime soon. I do like these ones because they have a little heat shrink on here, which I definitely think helps stop them from blowing up, and that's why they can not suck down, but that's why they can handle so many amps. Really easy how it's got the little solder tabs right here, so it can make setting them up a breeze. Yeah, and BO Heli S means it's got some very, very smooth responses there. So I'm a big fan. I've used these. I use them on my Helix build, on my GB190. I've used them like so many times in the past, and I've had fantastic results. All right, and then the last thing that I guess we're going to have a look at here, this is our PDB, and this is probably the one part where I think, you know what, this kit was almost killing it. It had some really, really choice components, had also some interesting parts. So look, I don't know about that FPV camera, maybe if that sort of widescreen's your thing, but the one part I felt that definitely was let down was this right here. So this is a very, very generic little PDB. There's no inbuilt OSD or anything like that. So you simply hook your battery up and use this to power your ESCs. So personally for me, I'm not going to be using that, because this build right here, I love the frame, I love the motors, you know, and I can obviously change out the props. Look, they're not bad props, but they're definitely not my favorite props. You know, it's going to look really, really cool with the LEDs rocking. I think it's going to be very, very quick. But don't give me this. I want to put an OSD or something in there. Like some of these boards that you can get nowadays are definitely a ton better. And I'll leave a little review to some of the ones that I've been looking up here. So maybe it could be the Quadcoopter flight controller with the built-in OSD, or some of the hub OSDs or something like that. But definitely that's what I want to be using instead of this, because really that just doesn't cut it in a kit of this quality. And especially when you're spending this much money, you want to be able to get some choice gear. Alrighty, so now that I've got all that, it's time to actually build the thing. Now, I'm going to take my time with this build actually, because I think it's going to be pretty special, and I don't have any other quadcopters that look like this, so I'm probably going to be wanting to test this one out and fly around quite a bit. So what we're going to do in part 2, I'm going to show you just how it went together, and we'll take it out and also give it a rip around the field and see just how it goes. So there it is, there's my part 1 review of the Firehawk, and like, I mean, the components in this thing are insane. DYS FIRE Motors, DYS 30 and heli ESCs, like a TBS antenna, awesome Hawk frame. So this thing is going to be an absolute rocket. Now what we're going to do in part 2, I have given this thing some sneaky little flights, but in part 2 of the review, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be sticking it on the bench, breaking it down, and I'm also going to take it out, give it an absolute thrashing around, because I think I'm going to be able to get some really, really cool lap times with this. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying. The Firehawk is such a better name, like Gbx210, Firehawk, yes please. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.